So, my name is Jessica, and I have been a coach for a long, long time. And I focused on retirement in the last few years because it's an area of life that everybody seems to look forward to, but everybody's not sure about how it's going to be, at least some people. And so I tend to do retirement coaching, retirement retreats. But today I want to talk to you about the different aspects of retirement and things that maybe you haven't thought about, and give you some food for thought, some questions to answer for yourselves, and see if this will help you make a nice plan for where you're going, whether it's happening in the next couple of weeks or the next year or however long it's going to be. And retirement is very much your choice, whether it's a loss or a gain. For some people, you can feel at the mercy of the situation, particularly maybe if you've been retired. But it's a major life transition. If you think about all the life transitions you've gone through, this is one of the big ones. And it can be your greatest chapter. So I'm a great believer on let's make it the greatest chapter. So there are 4 stages of retirement. Now, this is according to a talk that's on TED, if you know TED Talks on the internet, by Dr. Riley Moyes. And he talks about the 4 stages of retirement. And the first one is vacation. It's like, yippee, I don't have to get up in the morning. I don't have to go to work. Oh, wonderful. And you might go on vacation. You might take time out. You might do lots of different things. There are no demands for your time. And it sounds great. And for some people, they stay in vacation mode. But for most people, that comes to a kind of end because you begin to feel some loss. And one of the major losses that you can feel is a loss of identity. If you think about it, you've probably been asked every time you've met somebody new, what do you do? And you come out with your job title and a description of what you do and whether you love it or whether you hate it or anything like that. But that's the biggest question. And now when you meet somebody new and they go, what do you do? Yes, you're retired, but what do you do? And that's a big question. And if you haven't thought about that and if you haven't planned for that, then that's a real kind of big loss that you could be feeling. And so you really want to think about how you want to be and who you want to be. And we'll look a little bit more as we go forward. And after the loss phase, often what people do is they go straight into the panic phase and they go, oh my God, I have to get another job. It's like, I need to be able to answer the, what do you do? Because I haven't got the answer to the, who am I? And so I've seen people jump back in. I had a guy come out on retreat. He retired on the Friday. He came out on retreat on the Saturday. And then one of the first things he said to me is, I need another job. And I'm like, maybe, but let's just wait and see what comes out. And it's like, actually, by the end of 2 days, he realized he didn't need another job because he just needed to think of himself in a different light. So not reacting in the panic phase is incredibly important because you want to give yourself time to work out what you want your retirement to look like. And the 4th stage, once you get all through those, is the reinvention stage. Like, okay, who do I want to be? What bits of myself from my working world do I want to bring forward into this retirement? What bits do I want to leave behind and what bits do I want to add, and how do I want to reinvent myself? And that's a really powerful thing to think about, because it takes a bit of planning and it takes a bit of trying things out. Now, I'm a great believer that we don't actually have to go into the loss and the panic stage, that with planning you can go from vacation, yippee, into reinvention. This is who I am and this is what I want to do. There might be stages in that reinvention, but you can actually help move yourself forward more quickly without having to go through so much of the loss, which can really be difficult if you haven't planned for it. So retirement can be a 3-sided coin. Now you might be sitting there thinking, I'm a freedom seeker. I've longed for this. I know exactly what I'm going to do with my retirement. And you can really be excited about it. But the interesting thing is that I've known people who are freedom seekers, been longing for it for years, but when they hit it, because they hadn't planned it, they then hit the loss and they then hit the panic. So just because you know you want to retire and you're looking forward to all that freedom, you still need to plan what's going on then. And then the other side of the coin, of the three-sided coin, is the ones who are daunted by it, because you realize that I'm not sure who I'm going to be. I'm not sure what I'm going to want to do with my time. I'm not sure how my retirement's going to look and how can I enjoy it. And, that was like the guy I spoke to with the previous slide. I need another job, because he was so daunted by sitting with himself and discovering who he was and who he wanted to be as he moved forward, that it just made it really, really hard. And the other part of the three-sided coin are people who are being retired. Now, there might not be anybody in the room today with that, but that can be a difficult one because it's not on your timetable. You can be retired by your company. You can also be retired by ill health or by other life challenges. And so that side of being retired and not have a feeling like you're in control can tip you into the whole panic side of things. And so that can be difficult as well. So those are the three challenges, the three sides, and you want to think about, what side are you from? Are you the freedom seeker that hasn't planned properly, or are you the daunted and going, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen? Or have you actually been forced to retire for some reason or another? And it's always good to identify where you stand on that. So there's triple loss when it comes to retirement if you don't plan properly. And the first is the identity. I've always been an X. So who am I now? What's my title? What's my purpose? Who am I in this life? Your workplace relationships have defined who you were. And if you take those away and you haven't got other relationships in place, then that can be a real identity loss. And another loss is purpose. A lot of our roles that we play actually gave us purpose in life. And suddenly, if we don't have purpose, it's a difficult one to know kind of, how do I feel purpose? And that takes us on to usefulness. How do I feel useful in the world? And how can I shift into that new place? Now, I want to expand on these things a bit more because they're really, really important. And the first one is identity. Now, I had a client come on retreat, and he was a very successful businessman. He'd run his own business, sold it for a lot of money and retired. And when I asked him what his key part in his business was, he said he was the fixer. He would have everybody who had any problems anywhere in the business come to him. He'd find the solutions, fix the problem, and everybody would be happy. And he really, really missed that part of his life. So I said to him, okay, well, we have to look at and find a new way to use these skills, because actually the way he was using the skills was driving his wife up the wall because he kept trying to fix her problems, and she didn't need fixing. She was most capable of doing her own thing. And so it was a real thing for him to not get in the way of her, but also fulfill his passion. And so we came up with this idea of, why doesn't he become a mentor to young business people, and they could bring all their problems to him and he could help them fix their problems. And so he came up with this idea of taking 4 young business people on his boat for a weekend and fixing all the problems. And he loved that idea. And so he went home really happy, knowing that that passion was going to be fulfilled. Now, the next one is purpose. And again, another client who came out it totally illustrates this. He was the general manager of a very large hospital, sorry. And he had this idea that he wanted to leave a legacy of this hospital working a particular way. And unfortunately, ill health was forcing him to retire, and he couldn't fulfill this legacy. And this was the major sadness he had about retiring, was his loss of purpose through his legacy. So because we couldn't change that, because he had to retire anyway, we started to look at what legacy meant for him. And there was a huge purpose in that for him, of leaving something better and bigger behind. And so we started to look at where else he could leave a legacy. And what he decided was that he could leave a legacy with his family. He had quite a large extended family, and he could become the one person who could help that family become bigger and greater and more successful. And so that idea actually fulfilled that purpose, that need that he had within him. And that helped greatly with him accepting his retirement. And the third area is feeling useful. Again, I had a client on retreat, and she had been useful in everything that she'd done, whether it had been with individuals or with large corporations. She had being useful was one of her key values. And that it all was leaving, that all was going. And she felt bereft with not being able to feel useful. And what she actually had this epiphany moment when we were talking on the second day of the retreat. And she was saying, I have to shift into a new state of being. And that's being with a capital B. It's who do I choose to be? And letting go of that need to be useful and finding a way to be useful to herself. And so that shift made her feel much more at ease with the idea of retiring and letting go of one level of usefulness and moving into another. So for you, I would ask you to take these three things and take them away and think about them for you, and how could you feel differently in these three areas of your life. You also have to think about the inner impact, because it's not all outer, what am I going to do, who am I going to be, where am I going to go? It's not even all about purpose and usefulness. There's also an inner impact. And I've seen with people who've retired without actually planning what they want to do and who they want to be, that it's very easy to go into depression. You know, we have this feeling of sadness, we have this feeling of loss. And if we don't know how to deal with that, then what happens is that you suppress all those emotions because you don't want to feel them. But unfortunately, when you suppress all those sad emotions, you suppress all emotions. And so you can't feel happy at all. And so there's a mental side of retirement that is really important, and making sure that you've got mental stimulus and interaction and an identity to feel healthy too. Taking care of yourself is really important. So depression and loneliness is something that can hit if you're not careful. And so again, planning helps with that, because once you kind of move away from your work environment, you need to move into something. I had a next door neighbour, and she retired, and her husband died quite soon after. Now, her husband actually was her purpose once she'd retired from work. So taking away that purpose, she very quickly declined, not only in health, but in mental awareness. And she went back to Sweden, because I live here in Spain, but she went back to Sweden, and then she came back after 6 months, and I noticed a real difference, because she no longer had the routine and the purpose that she needed to keep her life interesting and moving forward. So the inner impact is something that we rarely think about, but is very, very important. And another side of it, and it's kind of tied in with the inner impact, is to allow your feelings. Sometimes we're not very good at allowing our feelings, and we want to hide our grief, or it feels wrong in some ways. I mean, goodness me, I'm retired. Surely I should be happy. Yeah, but there's emotions around it, and you need to give yourself time to deal with those emotions and feel them. One of the things about emotion is that I've heard that it's energy in motion. It's an energy that has to run through you. And so what you need to do is examine your grief and look at, what are you actually grieving for? And is there something else that can replace that grief? Replace that thing that you're grieving for? Because if you can identify that, then that can help. I had an interesting conversation with somebody who was in one of the previous seminars, and came up to me afterwards and said that when I was talking about grief, he realised that his previous career, which was in the armed forces, he hadn't grieved the loss of that role. And he realised it was something he needed to do. So it's an interesting aspect that we don't talk about very much. We don't like to think about grief and sadness and all those things. But actually, when you look at it, it's very important so that you can actually deal with it and move on. We came up with this question. What would it feel like to live a bloody wonderful life? And I love this question. And I came up with it in a previous retreat I had. And this person was very serious. And, I have to go out and still make a difference in the world and all this kind of thing. And I just said to him, I said, but what would it look like? What would it feel like to live a bloody wonderful life? And he went, I don't know what you mean. And I said, well, the retirement, there's no rules. There's no have tos. There's no shoulds. There's nothing you have to do in your retirement. There's only enjoyment. And whatever you do, whether it's full of purpose, full of usefulness, whatever you want to do, it has to be something you enjoy. You've worked really hard for this life, for this retirement. 40 odd years, 9 to 5, or probably much longer hours than that. And so it's important that actually this period of life, this next era, is full of only what you want. And that means not letting anybody judge what you're doing, but giving yourself permission to enjoy this period fully. I'm kind of semi-retired. I love what I do, so I actually don't want to retire and I don't need to, but I have a lot of free time. And it took me a long time to get used to the idea of being able to go and ride my horse in the middle of the day. And I'm riding through the mountains and I'm loving it, and the sky is blue and the sun is shining and I'm having a fabulous time. In the beginning, I kind of felt guilty. I should be working. And then I got used to this whole thing of just giving myself permission to live a bloody wonderful life. And now I ride and I sail and I hike and I swim and I do lots of stuff, and I work when I want to, which is purely my choice. I don't have to, but I love doing it. And that whole thing of giving yourself permission to enjoy things fully is incredibly powerful and incredibly important. So reinvention. Reinvention is a really important part of things. And the first step is to reframe your identity. Now, for example, it could be I was a teacher and actually I'd like to turn into becoming a mentor. Or I was an entrepreneur and I'd like to become a mentor. In the story I told earlier of the guy who actually really, really loved what he did, but it was time to leave his role and sell his business, but had all that experience that he didn't want to waste. So what he did is that he started a private mentorship program, and he took 4 people on his boat and for long weekends and mentored them into running their own businesses. He loved it, and he felt useful in that, and that was really important for him. So thinking about how you want to reframe the things you love about what you've done into something that you would like to continue doing is incredibly important for you and also for everyone else around. You are lots of different things. You're a friend, you're a supporter, you're a spouse maybe, you're a parent. So many more things about you are true rather than just your job. So now you're taking that role out, you're keeping all the other identities that you've got and maybe adding 1 or perhaps 2 more into there. But reframing your identity is really important. Finding a way to contribute is incredibly important too, on your own terms. You'll find that some of you will find, maybe not all of you, but once you've retired, everybody thinks you've got all this free time and you can come and do this. Well, yeah, you could, if you want to. And that's the real key, if you want to, because it's really important that whatever you choose to do, you want to do it. It's on your terms. It could be something big, say volunteering for a large charity, or it could be small, as in being more involved with your family. But the key question is, what feels fun for you? I had somebody I heard of who loved tinkering with stuff. And when he retired, he thought of all the things that got thrown away and the throwaway society we lived in, and it really annoyed him. And so he started up something in his local village where it was a drop-in centre in the village hall. Every Sunday, people could bring whatever they needed mending, and all the guys and women who loved tinkering and mending things could come and do it for free. And not only did it save things and it helped the environment, but it also started to create community in the local village, and everybody felt that they were contributing to something. So that was a great experience and a great idea of what you can do. So anything that you feel where you want to contribute, as long as it makes your heart sing. Discovering new purpose is also important, and it's slightly different from contribution. And purpose doesn't have to be something lofty. It doesn't have to be big and with bells and whistles on. It can be so much closer to home. My brother, who was a judge and had been incredibly busy for all of his working life, his new purpose was to become an incredible grandfather and very involved. In fact, he was probably more involved with his grandchildren than he ever was with his children. But it made him so happy. And it was a funny thing, because we all thought he was going to go and carry on and mentor people, but no, he just wanted to be with his grandchildren and help his own children by taking care and helping with them. But that became his new purpose, granddad, which is a great thing. And also, part of the reinvention is really important, is about staying connected. When we work, I know the home office has changed things, but most of the time we work, we are in contact with people. We're talking with people all day and every day. And I remember my brother saying to me when he retired a few years ago, my phone doesn't ring anymore. Nobody asks me anything. And he was feeling incredibly isolated. And so I said to him, you have to stay connected with people. I said, you have to make more of an effort with your friends. You have to make sure you have things in the diary. And if you haven't got a big social network and you're not yet retired, but you're coming up to it, now is the time to start building it. Look at what you're interested in. Look at what groups you could meet up with. Look at where other people who have your same interests are, and start to involve yourself so that you can stay connected when you no longer have that built-in connection with people through work. So the key to a happy retirement are 3 things. That's 4? 3 things. Not very good at counting. First is planning. It's not just what you do, but where you want to be and how you want to be and who you want to be. And I can't emphasize this more. Planning is the real major thing for retirement. If you plan your retirement, then you won't feel so lost when it starts. And for that, you want to have a look at your perspective and contemplate. Take some time. Who do I want to be? How do I want to feel? How will that feel? What 3 words will sum up my retirement that I want to have as a focus, as an intention? Because if you have that, you're more likely to get ideas of things that will fulfill that. So my 3 words for my semi-retirement is fun, nature, and connection. I want people. I want fun stuff. I only ever want to do stuff that's fun. This is fun. And I want to be out in nature as much as possible, because that's what fills my heart. And being forward focused, having no regrets about the past. There's nothing you can do to change it. You want to look forward and decide, how can you make the best of what is to come in your retirement? And those keys to a happy retirement are really, really crucial. Retirement can be one of the greatest things in your life. And you can have more time with your family, you can have more time for your passions, more time to simply enjoy life. It's a choice, and there's a plan behind that choice will make it easier and more fun. So grab it, wring the joyful juice out of it, make it the cherry on top. You've worked so hard for this. And so I always say you deserve to make it the best you possibly can. Retirement is a funny word. And I heard recently a different word for it, which I really, really like. So I want to leave you with this. Instead of retiring, go for inspirement. What are you inspired to do with the next chapter of your life? So I hope you found this all useful and it's given you some food for thought. And I just wanted to say that I've been doing retirement coaching for quite a few years now, and I offer both individual and couples retreats and also a 6-hour coaching program virtually. So if you feel that you would like some help to make sure you get the best out of your retirement, then the best thing we can do is have a chat. And just after this, there will be a link that you can write down, and you can literally book yourself a free discovery session in there, and we can have a chat and see how I can help you get the best out of your retirement, because boy, do you deserve it. Look forward to speaking to you soon.